fantasy football strategies evolve over time. It's just the way it is. I mean, hell, there was a time where we saw quarterbacks routinely being drafted in the first round. That's far in the past. One of the most recent trends has been that zero RB approach, right? And for a time it worked, but I'm going nowhere near that in 2021, and neither should you. It's pretty easy looking at the first round. You know we want a running back, right? A lot of running backs going in the first round, sometimes 11, sometimes 10. I'm trying to get one, hands down. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to get running backs 1 and 2 in the first 3 rounds, at least, maybe 4 rounds. But I know one thing for certain, that once I get past the early 5th round, I want to make sure that I have 2 solid backs that are bell cow status, 3 down backs. Now we can make that happen, but it falls off a cliff after that. And I don't want to be caught drafting some rookie that may or may not be starting week 1 or week 10 or not at all, or a timeshare back that's looking at 8 to 10 carries per game and gets by on efficiency alone. So in today's video, we're hitting on the top running backs to draft outside of the first round. Forget about the first round. Outside of the first round, through the first 4 or 5 rounds is where it's going to make a huge difference. The wide receiver position is super deep. We can load up there. Quarterbacks, wait till the end. But what about some of these running backs? Once we get past the couple in the 5th round, it's over. We got to hit on them. I'm looking to get at least 2 top running backs in all of my drafts. Let's dive into it. Hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and let's get rocking. So I'm not including Joe Mixon in this video for obvious reasons. He's right at the turn, right outside of the first round. If you can grab Joe Mixon, go ahead and do it. He's going to be solid this year, no doubt about it. The same goes for Aaron Jones. If Aaron Rodgers' status wasn't in question, I think he would certainly be a first rounder as well. I probably won't have a ton of Aaron Jones this year, but if I'm getting him in the mid second round, maybe earlier second round, I'm okay with that too. Although I do have some reservations, and I much prefer Joe Mixon. Now let's jump into our number 1 after the first round top running back to draft. And you've probably heard a couple of these names pop up before in previous videos, but if that's the case, that's why we have the timestamps. Click forward to the next one if you've heard a few of these already. If not, sit back and enjoy it. Oh, and if you haven't checked out Underdog Fantasy yet, you're doing it all wrong. It is easily the most fun I've had drafting in a long time. Every draft I've done so far this season has been on Underdog Fantasy. The app runs flawlessly. You can draft on desktop wherever you want. And they've got a $3.5 million best ball contest, the biggest in the history of best ball, with over $1 million to first place. And if you just want to wet your feet, sharpen your skills before you dive into that, they've got the puppy, $50,000 up top, $5 to enter. Whatever you want to do, it's over at Underdog Fantasy, the greatest best ball you're going to find out there. But the best part, if you use the promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, you get free $25 when you sign up and deposit. So go check it out today, underdogfantasy.com. You're going to love it. I talked a lot in my last video about how much I love Clyde Edwards-Helaire to break out in the second season, but didn't spend as much time talking about where we're drafting him or where I am drafting him for 2021. The answer to that, he would be my second running back off the board after the first round. So round 2 running backs after Joe Mixon, I'm going Clyde Edwards-Helaire first, over Najee Harris and over a couple of other names that are being taken that we'll talk about in just a moment. Here's why, if you haven't heard this yet. And if you have, we've got the timestamps down there. Feel free to click ahead to the next player. Edwards-Helaire was the RB22 in his rookie year. He did miss 3 games though, and Andy Reid's always been patient with his rookie running backs. We've seen it time and time again, unless he's forced to throw them into the fire like he did with Kareem Hunt back in 2017 when Spencer Ware went down before the season started. But Reid has produced an insane amount of elite running back seasons, from Brian Westbrook to LaShawn McCoy, Jamal Charles, and Kareem Hunt. If you go back to 2004, Reid has produced an amazing 13 RB8 seasons or better in 17 years, while 9 of those years his running back finished in the top 5. And while Clyde Edwards-Helaire didn't see a huge workload for the entire year, he was averaging a very nice 18 carries and 5.2 targets per game through the first 6 weeks before they signed Le'Veon Bell. And he was getting all of those looks on arguably the league's best offense. Edwards-Helaire had 20-plus carries in 3 of those weeks and could return to that type of volume in 2021. If that happens, you're going to be thrilled about drafting him in the second round. He'll easily beat his RB15 ADP, even if the Chiefs rank in the bottom half of the league in rushing attempts. Don't stress too much about last season. Edwards-Helaire had the chances when he was the lone serviceable back, and they should be there again this year. He'll need to be far more productive in the red zone, seeing that he turned 29 red zone opportunities into only 3 touchdowns. But again, that's even more untapped upside that could be waiting for us in year 2. Najee Harris is clearly the best rookie running back heading into 2021, and he has a legitimate shot of finishing as an RB1 in his first year. But I'm not looking to draft him ahead of Edwards-Helaire. As you just heard, Edwards-Helaire has all of the ingredients in place to blow his ADP out of the water this season. And while the same can mostly be said for Harris, I still have a few reservations that are holding me back. First, the Steelers' offensive line was truly atrocious last year and should only be marginally better in 2021. While Harris should be the clear bell cow back in Pittsburgh, efficiency could be an issue all season long. Second, Ben Roethlisberger isn't getting any younger, coming into the year at 39 years old. None of this, though, is to say that Harris shouldn't be a clear second-round pick. And he makes for a perfect RB2, assuming you're going running back in the first 2 rounds. I suppose you'd be all right drafting him as your RB1, but I'd feel a lot more confident grabbing a proven stud with less question marks to slot into that spot. Still, Harris is a legitimate 3-down back, and those will be extremely hard to come by in the later rounds. He racked up 425 receiving yards and 4 scores in his final year at Alabama, and we already know what he can do on the ground, finishing the year with 5.8 yards per attempt and 26 touchdowns. Ultimately, I don't want to draft a single team this year that doesn't have 2 bona fide feature backs, and Harris is definitely going to be one of them. There are simply too many good wide receiver options scattered throughout the draft, while running back drops off a cliff after only a few rounds. There might not be a running back I'm more conflicted on than Antonio Gibson this year. In his rookie season, Gibson was projected to be a pass-catching back or a Swiss Army knife type player for Washington, given that he was mostly listed as a wide receiver and had only recorded 33 total carries in 19 games at Memphis. Fast forward to August 2020, when Darius Geis gets cut, then a month later, Adrian Peterson is released, and Washington's left with Gibson, Peyton Barber, and J.D. McKissic in the backfield. Gibson rose to the top quickly and finished the season as the team's leading rusher, while also finding the end zone 11 times, despite being on the league's 25th ranked offense. So here's the good. Gibson should be the clear feature running back on the ground in Washington. And we can expect a more fantasy-friendly offense than last year, assuming Ryan Fitzpatrick is starting in week 1. Washington also had one of the more elite defenses in football, which should help keep the offense on the field. Now the bad. Gibson has to compete with J.D. McKissic in the passing game, and it was very evident last year that McKissic was the preferred option out of the backfield. Curtis Samuel's also likely going to steal some carries, and Washington just has more mouths to feed than they did in 2020. Now, I'd be surprised to see Gibson not get additional work as a pass catcher, given his track record of being a strong receiver, but there are plenty of question marks out there. Not to mention his only 200-yard rushing performances and nearly a third of his total rushing yards came against the historically bad Cowboys run defense last year. Gibson failed to eclipse 60 rushing yards in 9 of 14 games. So my final verdict right here. I'm still willing to draft Gibson in the second round because a big step in year 2 could be in play. He's going to get the majority of work on the ground while still hopefully seeing 3+ targets per game, and the running back position thins out really quick. But I'm drafting him behind Edwards-Helaire and Harris, which means I probably won't end up with much Gibson in 2021. Before we keep this going, I want to throw out a few thoughts on DeAndre Swift and J.K. Dobbins, 2 guys that you will not see featured in this video, but you will see featured in my overvalued running backs video from a couple weeks back. Here's the thing, they're both super talented, and there's no doubt that they could have great years. But there's also zero chance I want either of them as my RB1. If you're talking RB2, I get it, but I still have some concerns. J.K. Dobbins took over as the lead back in Baltimore midway through the season last year once Mark Ingram was phased out, but Lamar Jackson is still going to run a ton. He's still the best rushing quarterback in the league. Gus Edwards just signed an extension. There are some issues here that I'm not sure we'll be able to work around to make someone like Dobbins an RB1 in 2021. And the biggest issue I have, Baltimore targeted their running backs less than any team in the passing game all season long. So yeah, Dobbins should have some decent opportunity in the red zone on a high-powered offense, but there's mouths to feed in this backfield. And if he's not getting much work in the passing game, it's going to be tough to jump into RB1 territory. And I wouldn't be surprised if he's fringe RB2, although he probably settles in to a decent RB2 range. Now, for DeAndre Swift, we just saw Jamal Williams join this Detroit Lions team, and it sure seems like there's potential that this could be a 50-50 split. And if that's the case, I don't want DeAndre Swift in the third round right now. There's just no way I have any confidence on a team that has the second lowest win total in the league, lost Matthew Stafford, lost Marvin Jones, lost Kenny Golladay, that he is going to be efficient enough on the ground to get us where we need to go. Now, unlike Dobbins, DeAndre Swift has that pass catching upside, and that's going to be super helpful if they're playing from behind a lot. But I do think there are a lot of red flags and question marks when it comes to Dobbins and Swift for 2021. A healthy Chris Carson is going to make for a very strong RB2 option on any of your teams and makes for an easy pick in the late third or early fourth round. Carson's physical style of running has resulted in plenty of injuries over the years, but assuming he holds up in 2021, we're looking at not only a 13 to 16 carry per game guy, but also a 3 to 5 target per game player who stays on the field for third downs. The biggest thing about Carson heading into the season is the type of football Pete Carroll wants to play. He said on multiple occasions that he wants to get back to playing the style of football where the Seahawks control the tempo of the game and aren't forced into shootouts. That naturally leads to more rushing attempts, and he's talked about wanting more of them too. Seattle's defense was dismal through the first half or more of last season, which led to plenty of weeks where the run game was just secondary. And before 2020, where Carson only saw 140 carries across 12 games, he averaged 291 touches, 1,405 yards from scrimmage, and 9 touchdowns in his previous 2 campaigns. I don't see any reason why he can't get back to those numbers again this year, with Seattle having a renewed emphasis on running the football, the only backups on the roster being Rashad Penny, Travis Homer, and DJ Dallas, and Carson re-signing on a 3-year deal. Again, you'll be very hard-pressed to find 3-down backs after the 4th round, and Carson will be one of your last chances at doing so. So you could argue that he's actually being drafted a round too late, especially given the potency of this Seahawks offense. And before we get to our final 3 top running backs to draft outside of the first round, don't forget to go over to Underdog Fantasy. Use that promo code Awesemo when you do, AWESEMO, to get your free $25 when you sign up and deposit. You've heard me say this before, but I'm really not too worried about Miles Sanders. And it appears I might be on an island here, but here's the thing. Carson Wentz was benched for rookie Jalen Hurts and then traded after having one of the worst seasons in recent memory. And Philadelphia's offensive line was battered, with Andre Dillard and Brandon Brooks not playing a single game, Lane Johnson being either hurt or inactive all season, and Jason Peters playing with 1 foot in the grave. The Eagles won only 4 games and graded out as the league's 3rd worst offense according to PFF. Still, Sanders racked up over 1,000 yards from scrimmage in only 12 games and had 3 separate runs of 70-plus yards. Sanders averaged 5.2 yards per attempt and finished 5th in yards after contact per attempt among all running backs with at least 150 carries. Sanders struggled in the passing games at times, dropping over 22% of catchable targets in 2020. But as a rookie, Sanders dropped only 5.7% of passes and racked up 8 receptions of 20-plus yards on only 50 receptions. The biggest knock on Sanders is threefold. The Eagles' offense isn't supposed to be great. Hurts is a dual-threat quarterback, and Philly just signed Kerryon Johnson and drafted Kenneth Gainwell. Well, I don't see the Eagles' offense being the 2020 Jets level bad or even remotely close. I'm also not worried about Hurts eating into Sanders' production. With defenses having to account for a second rushing threat in the backfield, can actually open up more lanes for Sanders. And while everyone worries about another committee in Philadelphia, we're talking about Kerryon Johnson, who was the 3rd option in Detroit last year behind Adrian Peterson and a rookie. And then there's Kenneth Gainwell, a 5th-round running back who may have been a value where he was drafted, but shouldn't be considered a serious threat. Sanders was on the field for nearly 75% of snaps last year, and I don't see that changing dramatically because of some new faces, Nick Sirianni or anything else. David Montgomery was the RB4 last season and the RB1 over the final 6 weeks of the year. Only 3 running backs handled more carries than Montgomery, while only 5 were targeted more in the passing game. Obviously, Montgomery's pass-catching upside takes a significant hit with Tariq Cohen back in the mix, but we're still talking about a rusher who averaged 16.5 carries and 4.5 targets per game, and 3 targets per game before Cohen hit the shelf. And we aren't drafting Montgomery as a top 5 running back or even a top 15 running back. We're drafting him as the RB20. So while newly acquired Damian Williams could get worked into the backfield and Cohen will still be involved in the passing game, Montgomery remains the unquestioned RB1 in Chicago, hopefully on a more efficient offense than last season where the Bears ranked bottom 10. I have no problem drafting him in the middle 4th round, And knowing that he ranked 7th in red zone opportunities last year among all running backs just solidifies his position as a more than serviceable RB2 heading into 2021. Mike Davis was the RB6 in the 12 games he played without Christian McCaffrey last year, recording 1,000+ yards from scrimmage and 8 total touchdowns with the Panthers. He wasn't wildly efficient at all, and he's the furthest thing from an elite running back. But opportunity's everything in fantasy football, and Davis could be your last chance at landing a 3-down back before the position drops off to timeshare backs and speculative rookies in tenuous situations. Here's what we know about Davis heading into 2021. The Falcons didn't draft a single running back this year, instead deciding to sign Javian Hawkins as an undrafted rookie free agent, and only brought Cordarrelle Patterson on as backfield depth in the offseason. And Davis shouldn't be a 3-down back on some dog shit offense either. The Falcons may have lost Julio Jones, but they still have a top 5 receiver in Calvin Ridley and a matchup nightmare in rookie Kyle Pitts. Matt Ryan can still sling it too. Davis has a 5th-round ADP right now, despite being the undoubted bell cow back in, at worst, a middle-of-the-league offense. Despite all of his struggles last year and a huge decrease in workload over the final 6 weeks, even Todd Gurley finished 5th in red zone carries and 7th in carries inside the 5. I don't see another running back on this roster who should threaten Davis for those opportunities at all this season. I'd go as far to say even that he's a steal at a 52 ADP. That'll do it for today. Don't forget, head over to Awesemo.com. Check out all the great stuff we've got over there. In the meantime, keep crushing those drafts. We'll see you back here for the next one. Peace.